Hey, what is up YouTube? Kolst here, and we are back with what should be the last recording for all of the class card reviews for the new set, Showdown in the Badlands, coming out in Arena like tomorrow, probably today as I upload this actually. It'll probably be like right around the release. But yeah, it'll be in the rest of the game in a week. But with that, we're going over Demon Hunters, so let's talk about this one first. So the first one we have here is Pocket Sand. This is a 2-mana common spell, deal 3 damage, and with quick draw, your opponent's next card costs 1 mana more. That is very, very annoying, like very annoying. You know, if you played with like Frostbite in the game, you know how annoying Frostbite was as well. Cool. Frostbite made it cost 2 more, right? It might have only impacted spells or something, but you know how much impactful that can be. Just the amount of disruption from this can be really critical if you happen to know that they might have a certain legendary. Imagine they might have a Marigar or something, then you could just straight up deny Marigar by preventing them from playing it on turn 8, for example, right? You can do that kind of thing. Prevent other kind of like big AoEs as well. Very powerful. And overall, I mean, it's probably not usually going to be that crazy. There's a risk that you don't get the quick draw, and it's not doing that much, but still, this is very strong for just a cheap 2-mana card. It's effectively a 1-mana deal 3 damage and also goes face. So it's just blatantly not that overpowered, but it's just a blatantly overpowered card. So, you know, you draft it pretty highly accordingly. Next up, we have Fan the Hammer. In case you didn't know how to use removal properly, this card does it for you because it's 4 mana, rare spell, deal 6 damage split among the lowest health enemies. Unless I read something that was wrong, the way it works is that for each of the 6 hits, it's going to check the board for what the lowest health target is. By the way, that could be their face, so if your opponent's, if the lowest health enemy is the enemy hero, this can kill them. After each hit, if, for example, if there are 2 3 health minions, it's going to check and say, okay, there's 2 3 health minions, and you'll hit one randomly, and then it will finish off that minion, and then next, the lowest health minion will be the other one, so it'll then kill it off as well, because it'll do, you know, 3 successive damage to that guy as well. It's always going to check to see what the lowest health enemy is, and then hit that target. So overall, I mean, this can be used potentially. It could be a little bit awkward because you can't always use it as a fireball because other things might get in the way. But you can potentially use it as a fireball against a single target. You could potentially use it as an AoE that can be very, very flexible to exactly what you need to do. If there are divine shields or whatever, this is very good at dealing with any of that kind of stuff, right? So overall, this is definitely a very powerful removal spell, so you draft it very highly. Next up, we have Gunslinger Kurtrus. 5 mana 4/6 battle cry. If your deck has no duplicates, fire 6 random 2 damage shots at minions in the enemy hand. And so what I understand, this will actually kill minions in the enemy hand. I don't know if it triggers death rattles. I'm assuming it doesn't because they're not on the board. I'm not 100% sure about that because that'd be kind of weird, but I think it doesn't. But it will actually kill the minions, so it will discard them if it does actually kill the minions. So there's potential that you can remove very powerful battle cries and stuff from your opponent by playing this. But overall, it could also potentially damage a lot of things, because 12 damage is a lot, and if your opponent has a lot of spells, like if they're a mage or something, you might just kill whatever minion they did have might just get killed, right? So you might completely wipe their hand out of minions. Unfortunately, it does only hit minions, it can't remove other things, right? So that may also restrict it, because your opponent might just not have minions. It is possible. Usually it doesn't happen in Arena, especially if you don't wait super long. But so this will probably do something. But yeah, it's going to get a lot of value there. And overall, like a 5 mana 4/6 isn't that far off tempo. It's a little bit off tempo, but not by that much. So you're not paying that much other than, you know, the Highlander condition potentially to have this. So it's a pretty cool card. It should be a pretty good card in the legendary slot as well. The big thing is that it's not quite as much of like a board swing as a lot of the other Highlander cards can be, but it's a cool card. Yeah, it's a good card, so you'd still draft it reasonably highly, I think. Next up, you have Snake Eyes. 3 mana, 2/3, Naga. Battle cry, roll 2 dice, then discover 2 cards of those cost. Doubles get an extra discover. So yes, we are, if you're asking, yes, we are at the point we are literally rolling dice in Hearthstone. That is what we are doing. That means you have a 1 in 6 chance effectively of getting 3 discovers. You could get like 3 of any cost, between 1 and 6, but more likely you're going to get 2 different discovers of 2 different costs. There's probably not that much more to say because everyone knows that Discover is really good. This is a 3-mana 2/3, so you are paying something, but you're getting 2 or even 3 Discovers for it. So it's pretty good because even you can't even really low roll that much because even in Demon Hunter, for example, you have things like Illidari studies and cheap card draws that even if you like quote unquote low roll by getting the low cost stuff and you want value, you're probably still going to get cheap value generators as a result. So you're always going to get stuff that's good. So I think it's very, very strong. You'll draft it highly. Next up, we have Midnight Wolf. Why is this a thing? Because 6 mana 6/6 beast with Rush, that would already be actually mildly draftable, but with Outcast, summon a copy of this. 6 mana 12/12 Rush. Unless it really gets stuck in some part of your hand where you're just not able to outcast it, it might, if you draw it in the mid game, should be reasonably likely. That would be when it gets kind of delayed, but when you have something like this, you'll do whatever the hell it takes to actually get the outcast because that's a 0 mana 6/6 that you're getting, right? Which is stronger than anything you can imagine, basically. Overall, like you probably just aren't going to have that many big things, and you probably don't want to draft big things just to make sure that, things bigger than 6 mana to make sure this will actually be active. But it's not that hard to outcast something if you want to, almost always. So, this card is just completely broken. It's a common, you see it a lot. So, yeah, it's just very, very strong. Next up, we have Bartendobot. 2 mana 3/1 mech with Battle Cry. Draw an outcast card and slide it to the left of your hand. That would solve the problem, obviously. If you have something like Midnight Wolf, you wouldn't have to worry about that anymore. The point is that, okay, it's a 1 health minion, which you're paying more than 1 for, which is not ideal, but it's fine because you're getting a draw. It's going to be worth it because if it gets pinged off or whatever, at least, it traded mana-wise evenly. It's not the end of the world. And because you put the outcast card to the left side of your hand, you draw on the right, obviously, if you're not familiar. So it's just always going to be active and you'll have the outcast whenever you want to. So that's the big thing. You don't have to do it immediately. You could just play this on turn 2 and then your wolf will be ready for turn 6, right? So that makes it very, very strong because whatever you're losing by playing a 2 mana 3/1, you're getting back by getting an outcast guarantee to go off. So that makes it very, very good. As long as you have the outcast card, that would be the one big downside. If you don't have the outcast card, which can happen, actually, there aren't that many outcast cards. There's a small risk it doesn't actually draw anything. But otherwise, it's going to be very worth it. Next up, we have Parched Desperado. 2 mana 3/2 Naga Battlecry. If you've cast a spell while holding this, only 1 spell, so not very hard to do, especially nowadays. Give your hero +3 attack this turn. That's just very good, because really, Demon Hunter is actually a pretty spell-heavy class, even compared to the others. You have a lot of spells in most classes nowadays, but Demon Hunter is especially spell-heavy, and you only have to cast 1 spell, so it's just not hard to do. You can, if you have another 2-drop, you can coin the other 2-drop, and then your opponent responds with a 2-drop, and then you play this, kill their 2-drop, you're suddenly winning like crazy on turn 2, for example. It's just a very powerful card, and it's a early game card as well that has relevancy in the late game just by, giving you a hero attack that can go phase. So very, very strong card. Next up, we have Oasis Outlaws. 1 mana, discover a Naga. If you played a Naga while holding this, reduce its cost by 1. It's not actually going to be probably very often that you can actually play another Naga. There really aren't that many Nagas. Demon Hunter has some. I don't think a lot of them are even going to be in rotation though. It's actually going to be pretty hard to do that. But on the upside, there aren't a lot of Nagas in the game, period. And because there aren't a lot of Nagas, the 2-drop was a Naga, but you also have a high odds of hitting Snake Eyes or something, right? Specifically. So this is a lot of value because it's a very high odd. I have to look exactly, but it's a very high odd of actually hitting that particular Naga because there are not that many Nagas to actually hit. And as well, a lot of the neutral Nagas, there aren't that many of them, but a lot of those are also really good, tempo and or value swings as well. So I think this is a very good discovery. In any case, obviously any discover is generally good. So, and it's a good card. It's a common, you'll see it a lot. Next up, we have Load the Chamber. 3 mana Fel spell, deal 2 damage to anything, can go phase. And your next Naga, Fel spell, and weapon cost 1 less. The one big downside of this, I mean, it's technically tempo negative. You're paying 3 mana for 2 damage, which is not ideal, but obviously because you're getting 3 different discounts, there's a lot of potential to potentially mana cheat something, play it before the turn you're supposed to be able to. But as well, it's a net 0 mana, right? So it's 0 mana deal 2, which is very good. Potential to buff it with spell damage and all those kind of things. The one big downside of this is that you're really not guaranteed to have any of those things. You're probably going to have at least 2 of them, maybe, but like Naga's fel spells and weapons are all not the most common categories of cards to have. You usually have a couple, but sometimes you just don't have some of them. So that's the big fear, is that you might not actually be able to get the full value out of this. Nice thing too, by the way, is like if you have multiple of these, first of all, it is a fel spell itself, so the second one would be discounted, so you get some of the discount immediately. But as well, you can stack this, so you can play a really discounted weapon or a really discounted Naga, for example. Overall, it's just going to be one of those things where, you know, you have to check your deck to make sure you check the boxes, so to speak. You might want to be a little bit careful about that, but I think most decks will be able to get enough value out of it that it's going to be a decent card, especially if you can just mana cheat you can mana cheat a Flame Reaper or something, for example. That could just win you a game automatically. So I do think it is a strong effect for that kind of a reason. And the last card we have is Blind Eye Sharpshooter. 3 mana 1/5 Naga. Epic. After you play a Naga, deal 2 damage to a random enemy and draw a spell, then switch. So then it switches to spell. You have to play a Naga, ideally, and then a spell, and then a Naga, and then a spell. The big issue with this is very similar to that one mage card that existed, by the way, except that one gave you mana, right? Gave you mana cheat. This is very strong in theory, but you might run out of spells in your deck even, but like also the big problem is that it starts on Naga. And again, some decks might, but not all decks even have any Nagas at all. So, and you might not have that many, you might not draw them with this. So it's a little bit dependent that way. Your Naga might be a little more expensive as well, so it's going to delay when you can really combo this. So that makes it's definitely going to be a bit inconsistent as a result of that. Once you have a Naga, I mean, you're going to draw a spell unless you don't have any, and then so like you would at least get 2 hits of the chain, and that would be really strong. As long as you can do that, this card's definitely worth it. But the potential, it's possible, but it's very unlikely you're really going to chain this like super, super hard, right? Because you just aren't going to have that many Nagas most of the time. But I think overall, like, unless you're looking at your deck and you don't have Nagas, this is probably going to be reasonable. I mean, a 3 mana 1/5 isn't that bad of a thing to even just throw out there. Your opponent's going to be terrified of this. They might throw a removal spell on it that they might have wanted to hold, right? So it has potential just to be terrifying as well, played on curve, because it might be very difficult to clear on turn 5. So I think that makes it like reasonable. It's just, yeah, limited by the fact that you just don't always have that many Naga in your deck. But with that, I'd be interested to hear what you guys think about all these cards. Appreciate everyone hanging out to the end of these reviews, of course. Appreciate you all again. We'll see you all guys in the next one. Bye bye.